Great. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Much appreciated. So the purpose of today's webinar is to leverage the career network of our brotherhood. COVID has had a massive impact on unemployment. What we're looking to do is bring together a panel of brothers with knowledge in recruitment and finding careers at all ages today. So this webinar is sponsored by the Lambda Phi Foundation with the assistant from Ian in the fraternity. And just a little bit of background. My name is Gary Sanders. I'm the president of the Lambda Phi Educational Foundation. I'll be moderating today. And just for a little bit of perspective, I'm recently back to employed after a job search myself through these times and being able to take lessons learned from these folks that are joining us today. So let me start with introducing our panel today. So first up we have is Phil Rosenberg. Phil is a 1983 University of Illinois graduate. He's LinkedIn's most connected recruiter and career coach. Phil is president of Recareered and gives free weekly job seminars at resumewebinar.com. He has been a columnist for The Ladder's personal branding blog and spoke.com. Phil's articles have been published by the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Business Week, CNN, CBS, AOL, Fast Company, CIO, ZDNet, The Examiner, and leading job career recruiting publications and sites. So next up we have is Phil Bank. Phil is a partner at Kforce. Phil is a CPA with 30 plus years of executive search staffing experience in the areas of finance and accounting, extensive track record of successful placement of CFOs, controllers, public accounting professionals at all levels, financial analysts, tax professionals, etc. Phil is a 1978 honors graduate of Adelphi University. As a PyLam undergraduate, he served 3 years as KOE treasurer. He currently serves on the advisory board at the Adelphi School of Business. And third up on our panel is Boris Manikoff. Boris is a talent acquisition specialist with 9 years of combined experience in agency and in-house recruiting. In his most recent role, Boris is working on building engineering research and product teams at DataMiner. Boris is a graduate of Adelphi University, 2011, where he led the recolonizing efforts of the Phi Lambda chapter. So as Ian stated a little bit earlier, I'm going to start off, I'm going to moderate some questions with our panelists. If you do have questions, we want to take those towards the end and everything. Please submit them via the chat, and we're going to go through at the end and make sure that you're included and want to have this interactive. This is, to help everyone out that's, in this situation and looking for, their next career move. So let me start off. First question I have is, as we emerge from work at home orders, are you seeing any hiring trends? Phil Rosenberg, do you want to start off?
Sure, I'm seeing a lot more competition. We're seeing things like we're expecting in most roles 10 to 20 qualified candidates for every interview spot. But I also work with candidates, and I'm seeing that candidates aren't prepared for that.
Great. And, so it's more competitive what you're seeing. And then people, is it that they're just not prepped in there, or they don't have the, they're just not ready for being in the interview process and everything with the resumes and things?
From my coaching practice, I see that, and I see this also with my recruiting practice too, because I do both. I see that candidates they haven't figured out the difference in the strongest job market in our lifetime and the worst job market in our lifetime that was separated by a day. It just happened so quickly. And so I see a lot of candidates that are still operating as if it was pre-COVID.
Okay. So they need to recognize really that there are more candidates out there and it's become a lot more competitive within a day, as you said.
Yeah. And they need to recognize, what I see is that they need to recognize that in order to be successful during a terrible job market, they need to do more than they're used to.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Phil Bank, or actually Boris, and you actually just popped up. Do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
Boris,
Sorry,
sure. Go ahead.
sorry, Phil, my bad. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need to prepare. You have to understand that the times of companies kind of begging candidates to come and interview with them, and doing everything they can to extend the offer. It's still going to happen depending on your specialty and the type of position you have and the specialized skill set. But you have to make yourself more valuable, build value into your resume and your experience. You have to understand that for a lot of these hiring managers, the decision is no longer to hire or not to hire. They might have only one headcount available through the rest of the year, or they might have two at the most until the next board meeting. And so they are being very extending offers very sparingly. They're being a lot more calculated in their decisions. They're trying to calculate for the risk of hiring that one person or not hiring, or hiring somebody instead of another person. So you have to kind of anticipate their anxiety and anticipate the questions they might be asking, and kind of answer the all these concerns that they might have, even if they don't ask you directly in an interview. So anticipate all these concerns they might have about you having certain experience or being able to fill, step into more than just your role, and give them that information before they make their decision, so that they can feel comfortable offering you the position versus somebody else.
Great, thanks, Boris. Phil Bank.
I couldn't agree more with what Phil and Boris said. There's an overlay of the market to begin with, which is not good. A lot of the companies are in either layoff or freeze mode, which is something that most candidates haven't experienced because of how quick the market conditions change. Then there's the whole process of interviewing and getting a job. Now you have to adopt to formats like this one, where you are interviewing, through a lens. Resumes need to be probably more tailored than ever before to be very specific to the job. One generic resume is probably not going to set you apart now. So I think being nimble and being able to tailor your resume, cover letters, follow-up letters, they have to be really, really precise and effective because of the competition levels. And the process is going to take longer. I've talked to dozens of people who have been in processes that would have taken 2 weeks, and now they're 2 months, and they haven't been told no. They're still being considered. So a lot of it is not yes or no. It's not if, it's just when.
Yeah, and Phil, kind of think where we go into on the next question is, so you're saying some of those things that have increased with COVID is more with cover letters, resumes have to be more, tailored to what the job description. Anything else that you see that, is really important for being able to, get through the steps?
Yeah, I think once you get into the interview process, flexibility is critical. Somebody who will try to use their past salary as a determinant for their next salary, their past title as a determinant for their next title, you kind of have to throw that out the window. It's a new market right now. It's a new reality. And you have to basically not be unrealistic about what the market is. If somebody was making $90,000 a year and the new market reality is it's a $70,000 to $80,000 position, you can't pass up 5 jobs because they didn't pay enough before you figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, and great advice on there on the titles and things like that. Boris, are you seeing kind of the same thing? I know you on that hiring end. Oh, Boris, you there?
I think he's muted.
He may be.
Yeah, it looks that way.
So
Sorry,
There
yes.
you
There he goes.
What was the? Can you repeat the question?
sure. So, Boris, are you kind of seeing the same thing where, you know, Phil Banquet was talking about the,
Yeah.
you know, not relying on past titles. You may have to be a lot more flexible on salary and different things that you know,
Yeah,
it's kind of a new game here.
right. Yeah, no, I absolutely. I mean, I work primarily in IT and engineering, and usually, engineering and information technology is not as affected by the booms and busts. It's usually, always very bullish. But right now, everything is slowing down, and you might have to consider, a position that's a step or half step below your title or level. And you just have to kind of open yourself up to different opportunities. Absolutely.
Great. And Phil Rosenberg, I know you have a little different perspective. Anything you can add there?
I'm seeing, I'm having, my clients are getting jobs,
Okay.
but there's certain clients that are getting jobs. The people who I'm seeing that are finding jobs, and I'm getting reports of people landing jobs every week, but in every single case, they've thrown out the idea of being qualified, and they've figured out a way to be able to present more, meaning more value. Not the idea of a standard resume just doesn't work at all today. It's to the point where you're wasting your time if you're not investing a lot of time customizing, and they're going beyond job descriptions. They're not going through, these aren't candidates who are going through me as a recruiter. I'm experiencing similar things to you, to Boris and Phil Bank on the recruiting side of my practice, but I'm seeing standout candidates on the coaching side of my practice. The common theme is they're doing more.
Right. I think let's explore that a little bit more. And what are you seeing that successful candidates are doing? What is that more that they're doing? You touched a little bit on, customizing, getting around some of the job description.
They're not going through HR. They're bypassing
Okay.
HR. They're networking in different and in higher level ways that are allowing them to bypass HR and applicant tracking systems. They aren't depending upon job descriptions because they're finding out what's really going on currently in the organization. And in almost every single case, that's changed since a job description's been written, especially now.
Yeah.
Those are some examples.
Absolutely. And for that, are they using LinkedIn primarily? Are there any other tools that are helpful?
LinkedIn has a lot of limitations. And I know quite a bit about LinkedIn. I've run one of LinkedIn's top groups for job seekers. I've written dozens of articles on using LinkedIn. I'm one of the people that have broken LinkedIn with the number of connections that I have. LinkedIn's a lousy way to try and expand your network because it doesn't get to people's inboxes.
Yeah.
LinkedIn's trying to get you to instead communicate through their in-mail service. It's expensive, and it rarely lands in people's inboxes. It lands in a separate folder or email address that isn't looked at.
So,
there are better ways.
Yeah, great. Phil, what's your thoughts on that? What are some successful things that you're seeing? Are they similar to what Phil Rosenberg is sharing? Or
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a great database. It's a great way to find somebody or somebody who works at a certain company or a title, but not always the best way to contact people. Sometimes the best way to contact people, well, not sometimes, the best way is if you can get their mobile phone number.
Sure.
That's number one. If you can, get somebody's mobile phone number, you kind of own them at that point. But also get their work email. I'll call people when I'm recruiting, and I'll call them at their place of business if they're working. They say, "How'd you get my number?" How'd you get my number? I mean, you work for a company, they have a phone number. You call the main number and you ask for the person and they put it through. And these days, most people are out of the office, the work number is being forwarded to their mobile phone. So at that point, now I have their mobile phone number. I'm having a conversation with people, and I could be doing it to try to get a job order the same way a person who's looking for a job could use it to try to get a job.
Yep.
So LinkedIn works as a great database. It's a starting point, but you should try to mine it. I had to track down a candidate the other day. And I used LinkedIn to see who they were connected to. I saw they had a first level connection who I know. I called the first level connection and I said, do you know so-and-so? Can I have their phone number? And then I called the person outside of LinkedIn. I don't depend on InMail. So I think Phil hit it right on the nose. LinkedIn is a universal database that you kind of have to use. I think it would be hard for me to do what I do without it, but I don't rely on it. I work around it.
Great. And following up on there is, so making that call and being, very forward about that, is that seen as a positive? People see that you're willing to do the job, or do they see it, sometimes can they potentially see that as a little bit of, all right, too intrusive?
I think it's what you say, if it's a voicemail or if it's a live call, it's how you approach it. I don't take the assumptive that they're happy to hear from me. I basically would, try to approach them and say, hey, I came across your background. I was very impressed. I'm currently looking to find a new opportunity. And, I think I might have some of the attributes you're looking for. Do you have a few minutes to chat now, or might there be a better time? I think if you start with a little flattery and you're pleasant and you're kind, it's hard for people to get upset. I think once you break the barrier down, but I think younger people, and maybe there'll be some young people who want to weigh in, on the chat, but I think they're more intimidated to call people because maybe they don't get calls. I think there's a lot more use of texting and email, and I would rather default to a phone call till somebody tells me not to.
Yep, that's definitely a barrier that I've had to punch through for my mentally because as a millennial, we don't call people. We text and we email and we try to get people's attention that way. But you have to understand that if a hiring manager is really looking for somebody, they're going to talk to you. If they're not looking for somebody, they might sound annoyed on the phone, but they're going to forget about you in 5 minutes because they have other things to do, and they're not going to hold it against you, because if your skill set is really something they're looking for, they're going to make the time to talk to you and understand if you're a good fit for their team, especially if they're hurting for the talent or if they need a candidate. So it's better to be on their radar than not be on their radar. So make the phone call, text them, email them, however you're comfortable doing it. But it's a lot harder to ignore a phone call, especially if you get somebody on the phone, rather than just deleting an email or a text message.
Great. So, Boris, I'll move on here. I know that, with, being out of work at times presents a lot of, free time, and looking can be kind of a full-time endeavor. Do you see anything like skills or training that people can work on and that would be helpful during this time?
Any technical skill, obviously that pertains to your profession, to your job, data analysis. Something as simple as going to Khan Academy and picking up some SQL or Python or any software related skills would get you further and make you more competitive against some of the other candidates. It used to be that if you knew how to write a macro, you were worth your weight in gold. Now it's all about automating using Python or something similar to that. It's not just in software development jobs, in a lot of different positions. If you can automate a process and save the company money, it's not, you can think of it as like eliminating your own job. It's about providing value and automating and opening yourself up to doing other tasks by eliminating these menial tasks that can be easily automated. So if you can pick up a programming language that can be used to automate things, you're really going to make yourself more competitive.
Great, thanks. On there, so Phil Bank.
Yeah, on the finance and accounting side, we've encouraged people to maybe pick up their CPA studies if they're not certified. If you're a tax professional, you can get an EA designation. There's a lot of licenses. You can get certified in QuickBooks. So there were a lot of things that if you see these requirements on a lot of job descriptions and you're home with spare time anyway, this is the ideal time to enhance your resume versus when you're trying to grind it out, commuting to work and, putting in a 50-hour work week.
Yeah, so those certifications and things like that, training can really make you stand out over other candidates and
Absolutely.
perspective. And Phil Rosenberg, on your side, any skills, recommendations, things like that, talents,
Well,
items to pick
getting
up?
more skills, more training is always good. Who's going to tell you that you don't have that? That you have too many skills. But on the other side, I'm going to follow up on something that Phil Banks said, because it was really hit the nail on the head. That today, employers aren't necessarily looking that they have one job to fill. They have a very, very limited number of headcounts that they have approved, that they don't have to go kiss the Pope's ring to be able to get additional approval. So they're really they're, number one, a lot of the interviews that I'm seeing that are happening are pipeline interviews. We're interviewing to get a pipeline of candidates so that when we get approval for additional headcount, then we know some good people that might still be available. We've pre-screened them already, and we may be able to find people that are ready to go. But that's not helping candidates who are worried about paying their bills and making their mortgage. Employers today, I find, hiring managers are making emotional decisions. Not that you have the skills that I need, because I can find plenty of people that have the skills that I need. They're making a decision, I need you on my team. I want you, not your skills. I want you. And the people that I'm seeing that have been successful in landing positions are able to convey that, not based on their skills, not based on their qualifications, because everybody's qualified, that hiring managers, or even their resumes that they're seeing. They're seeing tons of qualified candidates, and qualified candidates are a dime a dozen. The people that have been successful have been able to go beyond that and create that emotional, not just connection, but need.
Yeah. Let me just expand on that real quick, Gary, if you don't mind. So part of the emotional thing that Phil just talked about is something that's becoming more relevant with a lot of companies, is behavioral interviewing. And so they're no longer interviewing just for the skills, but for behaviors and how you handle different situations. So the whole premise behind behavioral interviewing is it's not necessarily about you as a person. It's about how you handle situations, and the whole premise is the way you handle situations in the past is how you're likely to handle situations in the future. So they'll ask you situational questions about how you handle something simple like rude customers, how you dealt with ambiguity of a project that didn't have a lot of direction. They might ask you questions that in a format of I think K-Force now has adopted this STAR format, right? Interview like a star, right, Phil?
Yeah.
So the STAR framework stands for situation, task, action, and result. And so as you're interviewing, it's very important to remember that you're not just giving them a direct answer to their question. You want to give them a full answer, and start with describing the situation, explaining what the task in front of you was, telling them about the action that you took, and giving them a measurable result at the end. What happened, and can you measure the success of the project that you've completed? And so when you talk about your accomplishments in that way using the STAR framework, it just makes you sound like you don't just have the skills, but you understand the business and where you fit into that place in the business and how you're affecting the bottom line. It makes you a much better candidate. So I would definitely highly recommend the STAR framework.
Right. And that framework works well for somebody who has a job and is trying to maybe enhance their job or get more business. You can apply that same approach when you're talking to a potential customer in terms of finding out, what their issues are, describing behaviors you've done to help other clients in situations like that. So for some of the people on the call, it may not be about getting a job, or it might be about how to maintain the job they have and succeed in the job they have as well. We have a lot of people here that, me included, who this is going to be a harder year ahead of us. So I have to, sharpen my tools and get better at what I do when I'm presenting to a client as well. So, going after new business is not much different than going after a job. A lot of the same skills and approaches apply.
Right. And brought up some great points with the behavioral and everything. And I know Boris alluded to, kind of having the measurable goals, things like that. Do you find that better or add that with stories? For example, and Boris had used, tell us about handling a difficult, customer or client, being able to do that and relate it, well
Yeah,
through a story.
yeah, Gary, we refer to those in our company as proof points. Some people might say war stories, but yeah, you want to give proof points of, you can be very specific. You could say, for example, I helped my last company do a conversion from, Timberline to Yardi, and this is how we did it. And then if you give very specific examples, people tend to visualize it and believe it more. If you talk in general terms, have you ever done that before? Sure, I've done that. You're not going to score a lot of points.
Great
Yeah,
point.
and going one level above that, a lot of companies will now post their values on their career pages. So if you want to cheat the interview process and gain a little bit more of an advantage, go see what their values are. What do they value? Do they value working on a team, or do they value individual collaborators? Do they value being able to solve technical problems or functional problems? And all the answers are going to be right there on their job site most of the time, or their LinkedIn page somewhere. If they're a company of any more than 50 people, they're most likely have had an offsite or a meeting of the board or leaders to sit down and discuss the goals of the company and the values, and you can use then those values as you prepare for the interview. You can think of examples of projects and tasks that you've done in past jobs that will reflect those values, that then when the hiring manager hears them, they don't necessarily have to ask you how you've demonstrated those values. You will kind of be giving them those answers in the course of the interview anyway. So it's just another way to kind of gain that upper leg on the competition.
Great. And I'd say, Phil Rosenberg, you have on there. Are you seeing values becoming more and more important in interviews and discussions too? I think
Sure.
across the board.
Sure, you need to be able to show fit. But, and while using publicly available information that's available to you, it's important to do, it's not enough today. Again, people who have been successful are doing more. They're going beyond what's publicly available. They're becoming their own recruiters. They're learning how to do what we do and seek out information inside companies themselves. And it's allowing them to stand apart because they get better information. They know more about what's really going on right now. They know more what hot buttons are now versus what's public. They know more than a company's and employer's wins. Those are problems that were already solved. And if you're focusing on wins or job descriptions, also containing many problems that were already solved, if you're depending upon that, you're branding yourself, you're describing yourself as the wrong fit. And so it doesn't matter what skills you have. It doesn't matter that you check all the boxes. It doesn't even matter if you share values with an organization. If you can't show that, you understand what's going on now, then you've put yourself far behind other candidates and the candidates who are winning jobs today. Does that answer your question, Gary?
It does. Actually hits a little close to home too. Also, I've noticed some that I've done on myself. So, and transition on to another one. Another question here is, it's going to be a lot of research, a lot of work and everything in the full position here. And any tips, through the process for folks looking for work, how to keep positive, staying focused and, on task?
Are you asking me still?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, the things that you hear from everybody, exercise is important, a good diet and staying healthy important. But I think mentally what helps a lot of people is recognizing that there's an end to this, and that in 10 years from now this isn't going to matter. And if you look at it from that standpoint, you're not a job search is less likely to keep you up at night.
Great.
Focus
And
on
Phil
what's
Bank,
important and your family and all the good things going on in your life.
great points and things. Phil Banks,
Yeah,
you have a
I completely agree. I think you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of the job search and the rest of your family and friends. You have to eat well, you have to sleep, you have to exercise, you have to try to keep stress down. You know, looking for work is a job, but you can't do it 24/7. When you had a job, you didn't work 24 hours a day. When you don't have one, you don't want to spend 24 hours a day looking for a job. You want to wake up in the morning and have a plan. You want to have a daily plan, whether it's automated, whether it's a to-do list, and you want to have a organized approach, like who I'm calling for the first time today, who I'm going to try to identify to call on a future date, who I'm going to follow up with, who I was supposed to call back for a second call or a third call. And you work your plan. You don't let the plan work you. So the planning is critical. Taking care of yourself is critical. And also look at this as an opportunity to do some of the things that you weren't doing when you had a very, very busy, hectic life. Could be some stress reducers like a project around the house. It could be cleaning out your garage. It could be donating, stuff you don't need to charity. It could be cleaning out a closet. It could be looking at your finances. Try to find some projects to do every day that are not related to your job search, so you can kind of get your mind off of it. And I think you'll find that this time you won't feel like you wasted it. You feel like you got things done. Besides finding your new job, you took advantage of this time. That is, I'm sure we all wanted to have a little bit of a sabbatical at some point. I haven't had more than 10 days off in a row since I graduated from college. So I think some of this time at home, I'm getting some things done around the house that I wouldn't have done if I was grinding out to commute into the city every day.
and Boris, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's all part of mental health, and something that I've seen candidates ask me is oh, can I apply to the same position multiple times? Can I apply to the same company multiple times? Are they going to hold that against me? And like that, stressing yourself out before you even get called for an interview, before you even submit a resume is it can kind of have a toll. And what I have to say about it is, as a recruiter, an internal recruiter, like we have a company of only 600 people, and we have a team of 14 recruiters in-house that are responsible for the different areas in the company. Most of the time, if there's two different teams that are even working on the same project, they might have a completely different recruiter. So if you see similar positions on a website, you don't have to be shy about applying to both of them or all of the ones that you feel that are relevant. Don't stress yourself out about that. We're probably not going to see your resume more than once anyway. Sometimes people ask, I've been on the job market for 6 months. I've applied to all these companies. They rejected me. Should I apply again? Yeah, absolutely. You should apply again, because you don't know how their needs have changed. You don't know how their positions have changed. You don't know if it's a completely different team. A little secret about hiring managers: they're not always good at hiring, and they're sometimes too lazy to update job descriptions. So even though you see a same job description, it might be a completely different job at a completely different department. You should apply. Just things like that I've heard from candidates that stress them out about, what if a recruiter sees my application 5 times in a row? Aren't they going to hate me? No, we really, if you have the right skill set, even if we saw your application 100 times before, we're most likely going to look to move you forward and put you in front of the hiring manager. So, keep applying, and don't let the little things stress you out.
Great. All three have been given great, things to include and everything. And Ian, I think it's let's go ahead and I think open up for those questions and, hear a little bit from the audience.
Yes, we've received many questions. They're good. I'll share them. For those in the audience, you can continue to send them to me via the chat box. First was, what it would be an example of doing extra in this job market that wasn't necessarily previously done?
Customizing your resume, I think we already talked about that. Ooh, sorry. I think we already talked about that a little bit. It like even 6 months ago, you didn't necessarily have to update your resume. You would have probably, even if your LinkedIn was 3 years out of date, you would have probably gotten an email from 5 recruiters a week. Now, if you really want to stand out, you have to make your resume address the full job description. It's going to save you some time in the long run if you sit in front of the job description that's in front of you, and instead of just spamming your resume against everything that looks familiar, try to customize it and try to make it look more in line with the skills that the company is looking for. I think that's definitely necessary right now.
Thank you. For the folks that are soon to be or recent graduates and that also served on their undergraduate executive board, any tips on how they can best explain that on their resume and or in interviews that would be helpful?
You can jump, I don't know. Bill Bank or Bill Rosenberg, do you want to?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead, Phil.
Okay, you go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I was going to say some of that might be used as part of your behavioral interviewing content. So when people are asking you, have you ever done this before? Could you give me examples? So when I graduated from college, I was very good at, managing a small slush fund for the fraternity. I was the treasurer for the frat on campus. So I might use examples of how I managed the budget for the fraternity, even though I never worked in a work environment where I had budgeting responsibilities. So that might be an example. So if you think about some of the things where you've organized an event or managed finance, or maybe had to build a website, Boris could have talked about when we hired him about how he reconstituted the fraternity on campus, after it had been dormant for years. That kind of behavioral examples weren't done in a work setting, but they were done in a campus setting, and they're very applicable. I talked about recruiting as a rush chairman for the frat when I had to get my first job in recruiting. I never recruited before. Getting people to join the fraternity was where I kind of did that for the first time. So those are probably some good examples I can think of.
I can jump in with a couple more to add to what Phil said, which are all great, but not everybody served on an executive board. So what about the folks that haven't? One of the things that one of the biggest benefits of joining a fraternity and is the network that you generate. And it's not just the guys that are in the fraternity with you, but their parents. And it gives you a whole different type of database that you can utilize to start networking your way into positions rather than depending upon crazy amounts of competition from applying online. Plus, these are people that know you, can vouch for you. Not only, and in addition to that, the alumni network too. Those are things that I know when I was in school, and I graduated in '83, which was not in, kind of in between a recession and a strong hiring period. We didn't know to use that. Did you guys, Phil and Boris? Were you utilizing your fraternity brothers and alumni as network when you were trying to search for a job out of school?
Well, my first job was at Phil's company at Kforce. So
you did.
Way
to go.
He did. Phil, that was like teed up for you. That was like almost like a prepared question because you had a good answer there. But yeah, that's great. But in my case, I went through the campus interviewing process. So I was very fortunate. I went through the accounting program in school. But to get my internships, I relied on some of my older fraternity brothers, like Mike K, Rick Hine. A bunch of them had been accounting majors, who, you know, would show me the ropes on like which were the good firms to intern with and which were the better firms to work for. So yeah, it was like having real older brothers to kind of guide you. You know, a lot of people go to, you know, college and their only friends are in the same classes they are. You know, all the freshmen are, you know, trying to figure it out together. One of the great things about being a fraternity brother was having sophomores, juniors, seniors, and alum to give you guidance and help along the way. So it's one of the best things about fraternity life that I ever found.
Yep.
What?
I just want to chime in here real quick. So, sorry, guys. So look at, I know that, you know, most of you graduated. Well, I graduated 10 years, which just hit me the other day that it's been almost 10 years since I graduated from college. But the fraternity now is not what it was even 10 years ago. I mean, between all the events that you guys have to take care of, you know, keeping track of active and inactive members, the dues, reporting to the IGC or IFC, reporting to the student organization on campus, to the administration, dealing with all the different faculty advisors. That, you know, that experience, even if you were just a brother organizing one of the charity events for the fraternity, like that experience alone should qualify you for like an administrative assistant position somewhere. Because I know that 10 years ago, I didn't have to keep all those spreadsheets and lists and things like that. It was a little bit simpler. But I've been talking to some of the undergrads over the past couple of months, and the amount of work that you guys have to do to run a fraternity now from a risk management perspective, from brotherhood and philanthropies and all the competing interests, you know, you should definitely communicate that experience. If communicated in an eloquent manner, that should definitely qualify you for some entry-level jobs.
Thank you for sharing all that. Building off the example and the story that Boris shared about eventually being connected with Phil, one of the questions, and this may not be answered today, but it's very relevant, is how can we effectively help fellow alumni reach out about hiring needs? And this alum who said this said, I want to ensure I get word out for the roles I'm hiring for our alumni, but never found an effective method other than calling a few brothers and asking if they knew of anyone. So any tips on how we can better do that when it's not just from the same chapter like it was for Phil and Boris?
Yeah, I can take that. Whoever wants to avail themselves of this network should just build a great email list and consider doing a periodic newsletter. K-Force has something called a Friday Flyer, and everybody that we meet, clients, candidates, friends of the firm, we add their email address to the flyer, and we're sending out job listings. We're sending out events in your local city that are going on that weekend, weather reports, TV shows and movies. We just try to put a little weekly newsletter together. It's a great place to promote a job opening. So whoever wants to take that initiative, just build a great email list, keep building it, and just send out an email blitz. If anybody doesn't want to be on it, they'll opt out. You know, I may have 5,000 people. I have 5 people opt out. Nobody's going to get offended by one more email. And if they don't want it, they don't have to receive it. But for the other 4,995, there's usually some content in there that'll be useful.
And adding to that, we can make it more of a millennial solution too, because content today doesn't have to necessarily be written. It doesn't have to be in a newsletter form. It could be in a blog. It could be a vlog. It could be YouTube videos. There are plenty of ways in addition to email lists to amplify your message and get it to more people through social media.
Yep.
So there's maybe not so much Boris, but certainly for Phil and I, there are tons more avenues to be able to get your own personal marketing message out than existed when than us old guys graduated college.
Yep, and I just want to remind everybody that we have a very well curated group on LinkedIn with I think over 5,000 members of Piling with Five Brothers that
Yep.
I post to whenever I have an opening that I think would be relevant. You know, entry level positions for recent grads or otherwise. And then on Facebook, there's a group called Alumni Actives and Alumni that has, I think, well over 20,000 members of folks. Where if you really want to tap into the network, post on there, and I think you'll get some responses from that as well.
And I think most chapters have that too. I know. I guess I got that information to you late. I was from University of Illinois Tau Delta chapter. We've got a alumni group also on Facebook, and I think many of the local chapters have something similar that you can utilize not only to find additional people to network with, but also as an additional avenue to be able to get out your own personal marketing message.
Before we go to the next question, just from the headquarters standpoint, we're also happy to help any groups who want to further build their alumni associations or their alumni groups for the purposes of achieving these things or just networking socially amongst themselves. So if that's of interest, by all means, please message us at headquarters@pilotify.org. The next question was, what areas of the country are hiring more right now?
Silicon Valley.
So tech, is that because of the Silicon Valley? Seen a lot more tech from there, Phil?
Yeah, and not just IT, but operational positions as well. And it's not from every company. Healthcare, but so areas where healthcare is strong.
Yep. If you want to look at some resources for trends of jobs that are opening up in different places, let me see if I can. I don't think I can share my screen right now, but so there's a bunch of different websites that I can send to Ian to distribute to the group. Stillhiring.io, layoffs.fyi. There's a lot of companies and a lot of recruiters that are still hiring, but they're making themselves heard or seen through these kind of conglomerate job boards where anybody can come and tell people what they're hiring, what departments, what locations. So I'll send some of the links out to Ian after this.
One of the trending areas that's hiring a lot is it's wherever you live. Remote hiring has been very popular the last couple of months. Now, whether it's going to continue in the same volume or it's going to diminish a little bit once people can get back to the offices. But generally, a lot of the jobs that we filled over the last 3 months have been just work from home indefinitely. Could be working as in the banking field, working on loans, loan modifications, mortgage people, recruiters, people in the staffing industry, anybody who's being hired. For the most part, companies are learning how to have people work from home, and this could affect the answer to that question, Ian, is down the road, where are the jobs going to be? There's already stories about real estate being so expensive in places like Silicon Valley. Why can't people live in Montana and work for Google?
For those following along, I just pasted in the chat box a handful of websites and links that Boris has provided. We will distribute them at the end of the call as well. But the next question was, what are the best steps to appropriately bypass HR? That was a suggestion. How do you do that appropriately and thoughtfully?
I'll jump in because I brought it up. I don't think you have to. I don't think today you want to worry about appropriate. I think today you want to find the answer to that is any way you can. Any way you can get directly to a hiring manager. I talk to candidates all the time that are concerned that what's going to happen if I upset HR? Well, if you're successful in getting past getting to the hiring manager, it isn't going to matter because HR isn't running the process. HR isn't making the decision. HR is screening you out and keeping you from hiring managers. So if you can learn how to do what I do, what Boris does, what Phil Banks does, we don't go through human resources, at least unless we are forced to. We go to hiring managers. And candidates can learn how to do that too, without having to worry about necessarily whose toes am I going to step on.
Right. And
what do you guys think?
to follow up on that, it's not just about how not to get HR upset or how not to get anyone upset. On the positive side is to get someone's attention. It's always great if you have a champion. If you have a friend or relative who works for that company already, if the first sentence I hear on a voicemail or I read on an email is, Phil Rosenberg, your fraternity brother, suggests that I contact you, already the person's elevated. If it starts out with, I saw your ad in the New York Times, I'm not jumping up and down to read the rest of the content. So try to find a champion in the company or connected with the company to help further your cause. And if you are going to be sending things in writing, if you happen to have a recommendation letter to include with it, or you can name drop someone in the letter, it goes a long way as a courtesy, just maybe because it's bad karma. If somebody's referred to me by somebody I like and know, I contact them whether they're qualified or not. I just feel like it's something I have to do. It's the right thing to do.
Yep. Yeah. Because so as an internal recruiter now, we pretty much have to talk to anybody that was referred by the company because we want to encourage referrals from other employees in the future. So if you get referred for whatever position, you're going to at least talk to a recruiter who's going to find out more about you. And if the position you were referred for is not a fit, there might be something else, or they might have somebody else in their network. So it's finding a champion for yourself is a good way to go.
Next question was following up on the emotional connections piece that was discussed previously. What are the traits in a candidate as a person that can be leveraged to create that kind of connection?
I'll jump in. Listening skills, likability. You got it. Part of it's passing the beer test. And part of that emotional response is showing that you're willing to go beyond what everybody else is doing. Meaning that part of that is even not depending upon going through human resources, not depending upon going through job boards, but taking a more active role in searching for a job. That means networking. So I'm going back, that draws me back to the conversation that we just had. Those are all things that can help you stand out.
Just to kind of add to that for the beer test. So, we've been, you have to kind of understand, you have to educate yourself on unconscious bias, and like it or not, it's still a big player in hiring decisions. Before when you walk into the interview room or the video interview now, before they can even realize it, the person's already made a judgment on you just based on the way you look. And no matter how much time we spend on training people, it's just human nature. And right now the new standard is you're not responsible for the first thought, you're responsible for the second thought. And so we, as a recruiter, we've been educating our interviewers and educating our hiring managers on combating unconscious bias and making sure that everybody gets the right opportunity. But you still have to prepare yourself for the unconscious bias that can affect you in the hiring decision. The beer test is nice, and I'm sorry to disagree with you here, Phil. But
It's okay.
Sometimes you don't want to work for the company that has the beer test, because if they really just want to, if they have that beer test rule or the asshole rule, part of my French, you might not want to work there, because if that's what they value, if they just want somebody who's going to come and have a beer with them after work and they could, they're just getting it along with, that might not be the right environment for you. So you have to figure out, are you there to hang out with people, or are you there to accomplish things and build a company? So just be careful with that.
Another question was, when it comes to skill development, what are some of the best resources available that you all have seen? How much do they typically cost, and are any of them free?
YouTube, and they're all free. Anything you want to learn, you don't even have to go to medical school anymore. Just go on YouTube. Tell you how to do surgery on yourself at this point. But seriously, there's so much content on there, free learning, especially now. I would just do a Google search on whatever topic or interest you have, and then scroll through the thousands of offerings until you find something you feel really is cost effective and legitimate. I wouldn't look to spend a lot of money up front. There's a lot of free resources before you invest thousands of dollars in something that you might be able to get for free.
I think I mentioned this already, but Khan Academy has a bunch of different courses in accounting, technology, marketing. A lot of Ivy League schools now offer free courses online that you can go through. LinkedIn Learning. I know we don't like LinkedIn in this panel, but LinkedIn Learning does have a lot of resources for you to kind of advance your career. Sometimes you need a corporate license. Sometimes those courses are free. Again, don't jump on something that costs money.
I'm going to flip that question and continue on with what Phil Bank was saying, is that not only can YouTube be utilized to get free, learn new skills in any topic in the universe, why not, as a new graduate, why not use that to be able to differentiate yourself by teaching others what you know? So let's say that you're a Ruby developer. Why not teach people how to be able to solve problems in Ruby as a way to be able to stand out to employers? You've got you have the advantage of being able to utilize a platform like YouTube for both. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that.
Yep.
There was a question of, and I know we're getting near the end of our time, so we'll take a few more questions, but it was, do any of you have experience working with business analysts? And if so, what are effective ways to enter into that space?
Business analysts. So that's a blanket term for a lot of different positions. In my experience on the technology side, a business analyst is somebody who translates functional needs into technical requirements for a software that's being built, or a system that's being built, or a process that's being developed. So if you want to get into that type of work, entry-level jobs as a business analyst are not necessarily called business analysts. They're sometimes called just analysts, or junior analysts, or something like that. So you stay away from titles, and make sure your writing skills are superb. You understand technical terminology, and it's not an easy thing to break into, because a lot of times they want somebody to have enough technical knowledge or background, either a computer science degree or previous experience building software. So for to become a business analyst, it's not a hard job once you're in there, but it's kind of like a crossover between two worlds, because you're dealing with the business side and then with the technology side, and you're kind of bringing them together.
And with Boris said, it's kind of a chicken and an egg question for a lot of candidates, especially new grads. So it's hard to be able to demonstrate experience when you're not getting a lot of business analysis experience through school. You're either getting, typically the avenues that people come through is either through a business, oftentimes finance or accounting degree, or through an IT degree. But usually most candidates don't have both. One way to be able to do that is through grad school. One way to be able to do that is through dual degrees from an educational standpoint. From a job standpoint, the obvious things are go get a job with the Big Four. But that's like the answer to your question is just go do it. It's not helping a lot of people because there's a limited number of positions. If you can't do that, if you haven't had luck getting through the Big Four hiring process, choose a position either from a functional side, in accounting, finance, or from the IT side, depending upon where your degree and background is. Start out in one of the two and go make friends in the other department.
Before we wrap things up, and before I turn it over to Gary to do that, I'll finish with a comment from one of our participants and one from myself. One of our participants just noted, of course, the importance of remembering your digital footprint, and how in his company they're very particular about looking at, of course, social media as well as YouTube personal channels about what people are posting. That stuff does stick around and can be influential in whether you're invited for an interview or not. Lastly, especially for our younger alums on the phone, our headquarters is happy to help you talk about your eBoard experience in even more detail. If that's of interest to you, please take advantage of us if we can be of assistance to you. But at this time, I'm going to turn it back to our moderator, Gary, for some final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And I just want to thank Phil Rosenberg, Phil Bank, and Boris Manikoff. Great conversation, great contribution. Much appreciate everything that you've done to help today. And, and everyone keep positive. Hopefully you've gotten some great tips out of today and things like that. And, on the final note is always remember that network of brothers. I think it was touched on a few times a day of, just reaching out, how that can really make a difference and kind of stand out and use that. So on that, thanks everyone, and stay in touch. Take care.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, guys. Good luck, everybody.